everybody. This is day 2 of reading Harrison Bergeron. There's a quick thing that I wanted to go over with you to hopefully help you understand why the society that we are reading about in Harrison Bergeron has it set up the way that they do, as far as why everybody is on the average line instead of any other line. Because a lot of kids in the actual in classes that I have in person, they were having a really hard time understanding why people that are more pretty or smarter or stronger or faster, why they would allow the government to give them the handicaps that make them look average. So I kind of made 2 lines here to explain this to you. So the first line we have up here is the old standard, and that would be what we're experiencing right now. So in our culture, in our communities, in our society, right now, currently, 2020, we have a beauty standard, right? For girls and guys, and it's what the supermodels look like on the runway, or what the models look like for makeup, or what the athletes look like who play in your favorite sports teams, or who are modeling the athletic clothing that so many of you wear on a daily basis, okay? That is the standard that we are trying to achieve. And for most people, that might be above average beauty, or above average intelligence, or above average athletic ability. So basically, everybody is down here, and we want to achieve the old standard, which was above average, whatever. Now, in Harrison Bergeron's world, in Harrison Bergeron's society, the new standard is set way down here, the average person. So everyday people, right? And the goal is to bring everybody down to this average. So people that are above average, who are above beauty, above average intelligence, above average athletic ability, whatever, they want to be average, okay? They want to be brought down to this level, because if they don't, then they stick out, and that can cause problems for them, because remember, the whole point of having the handicaps is to make everybody equal, so that there is no more competition or judgment or war or whatever it is, okay? So people that are above average want to be brought down to the average line, because it helps them blend in more, okay? So they, the masks and the weights and the radio frequencies in the heads, those are there for a reason, because it helps bring those people down to that average line, okay? And another reason that we set our standard with this average bar is because we talked about this, at least I hope we did, in the lottery, okay? Remember, the people of the village, they were very simple people. Think about how they spoke, right? They did not sound the smartest. And Shirley Jackson did that for a reason. And she made these people simple because simple people don't ask questions, right? They're going to do the lottery every year and not think about the fact that they're killing people, because they're not smart enough to even come up with that question, okay? And it's the same idea here. If our new standard is the average person isn't going to think about whether or not it's fair to have these handicaps put on them, or if there's a better way to go about things. They're not going to question the way that the government is running everything. And that's the whole reason the standard is set down here, okay? So I hope that kind of cleared up some questions that you guys have. So let's go ahead and continue reading. Go away. All right, so we left off, Hazel and George were talking about, what would happen if George could take some of the lead birdshot balls out of his weight that he has for his handicap. And George said if he did that, then everybody could do it, and then that would cause everybody to fall into the Dark Ages, which essentially is our time in history, okay? All right, so I think we're right here. If Hazel hadn't been able to come up with an answer to this question, George couldn't have supplied one. A siren was going off in his head. Reckon it'd fall apart. It'd all fall apart, Hazel said. What would? Said George blankly. Society, said Hazel uncertainly. Wasn't that what you just said? Who knows, said George. The television program was suddenly interrupted for a news bulletin. It wasn't clear at first as to what the bulletin was about. since the announcer, like all announcers, had a serious speech impediment. For about half a minute, and in a state of high excitement, the announcer tried to say, "Ladies and gentlemen." He finally gave up, handed the bulletin to a ballerina to read. "That's all right," said Hazel of the announcer. "He tried. That's the big thing. He tried to do the best he could with what God gave him. He should get a nice raise for trying so hard." "Ladies and gentlemen," said the ballerina, reading the bulletin. She must have been extraordinarily beautiful because the mask she wore was hideous, and it was easy to see that she was the strongest and most graceful of all the dancers, for her handicap bags were as big as those worn by 200-pound men. She had to apologize at once for her voice, which was a very unfair voice for a woman to use. Her voice was warm, luminous, and a timeless melody. "Excuse me," she said, and she began again, making her voice absolutely uncompetitive. "Harrison Bergeron, age 14, she said in a grackle squawk, has just escaped from jail where he was held on a suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government. He is a genius and an athlete, is underhandicapped, and should be regarded as extremely dangerous." A police photograph of Harrison Bergeron was flashed on the screen upside down, then sideways, upside down again, then right side up. The picture showed the full length of Harrison against a background calibrated in feet and inches. He was exactly 7 feet tall. The rest of Harrison's experience was Halloween in hardware. Nobody had ever borne heavier handicaps. He had outgrown his hindrances faster than the HG men could think them up. Instead, a little ear radio for a mental handicap. He wore a tremendous pair of earphones and spectacles with thick, wavy lenses. The spectacles were intended to make him not only half blind, but to give him wanging headaches besides. Scrap metal was hung all over him. Ordinarily, there was a certain symmetry, a military neatness to the handicap issued to strong people, but Harrison looked like a walking junkyard in the race of life. Harrison carried 300 pounds. And to offset his good looks, the HG men required that he wear at all times a red rubber ball for a nose, keep his eyebrows shaved off, and cover his even white teeth with black caps as snaggletooth random. Okay, so remember, Harrison is Hazel and George's son, and he was taken at age 14 by the government. And now we learn that he was taken by the government because he's a genius, right? He is so smart and so above average that they are having a hard time keeping handicaps up with him. So he is so tall, so strong, so handsome, so smart that they don't have enough good handicaps to keep him subdued like the rest of society. And now he's on the loose. This is a huge, big deal, right? Remember, I told you guys, in order for a dystopia to work, in order for this type of society to continue, everybody has to go along with it, okay? There has to be total conformity from all people. Even if there are people out there that don't like what's happening, they don't have the power or the strength to overcome these differences or these oppressions, okay? But Harrison Bergeron could stand up and be the hero and spark that need to want to overthrow things. And that's what they're worried about, okay? So Harrison Bergeron could be the one thing that causes this whole system of equality to fall apart. And that's why it's such a huge, big deal. How are we doing on time? Hold on one second, folks. Okay, so Harrison's escaped. The announcers, I think, is really funny, and it's ironic. Remember, irony, that they have a speech impediment, right? And the reason they did that is because usually people who are on talk shows, like, they have very good speaking voices, and obviously they can't have that, so these people have to have a speech impediment. And remember, speech impediments just make it very difficult for people to talk. So, this poor guy, right? It's hindering him from speaking. So he gives it to the ballerina, and we know the ballerina is the most beautiful and the most graceful because she has the worst handicaps on her. And she even has to disguise her voice because it's so pretty, and she's afraid that she'll get in trouble and has to make it all gross and terrible. So I just can't even imagine having to constantly think about how you sound and how you look and compared to everybody else. just to make sure that you don't stand out because you're above average. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so Harrison has escaped, and we're going to see what they say. Okay, if you see this boy, said the ballerina, do not, I repeat, do not try to reason with him. There was a shriek of a door torn from its hinges. Screams and barking cries of consternation came from the television set. The photograph of Harrison Bergeron on the screen jumped again and again, as though dancing to the tune of an earthquake. George Bergeron correctly identified the earthquake, and while he might have, for many was the time of his own home, had danced to the same crashing tune. My God, said George, that must be Harrison. The realization was blasted from his mind instantly by the sound of an automobile collision in his head. When George could open his eyes again, the photograph of Harrison was gone. A living, breathing Harrison filled the screen. Clanking, clownish, and huge, Harrison stood in the center of the studio. The knob of the uprooted studio door was still in his hand. Ballerinas, technicians, musicians, and announcers cowered on their knees before him, expecting to die. I am the Emperor, cried Harrison. Do you hear? I am the Emperor. Everybody must do what I say at once. He stamped his foot and the studio shook. Even as I stand here, he bellowed, crippled, hobbled, sickened, I am a greater ruler than many of you who ever lived. Than any man who ever lived. Now watch me become what I can become. Harrison tore the straps of his handicap harness like wet tissue paper, tore straps guaranteed to support 5,000 pounds. Harrison's scrap iron handicaps crashed to the floor. Harrison thrust his thumbs under the bar of the padlock that secured his head harness. The bar snapped like celery. Harrison smashed his headphones and spectacles against the wall. He flung away his red rubber ball nose, revealed a man that would have awed Thor, the god of thunder. I shall now select my empress, he said, looking down at the cowering people. Let the first woman who dares race to her feet claim her mate and her throne. Okay, big stuff is happening. All right, we already said Harrison is the exception to all of the rules, right? He is the tallest, the strongest, the smartest, the quickest, the fastest of anybody ever to exist in this society. Which means all of the handicaps that he had on, he kept on because he wanted to, right? He's been planning this. Remember, they took him into custody because they thought he was trying to overthrow the government. And obviously he is, right? So Harrison breaks out of jail. He storms into the this production of the ballerinas dancing on stage because he knows it's going to be broadcasted, right? And he rips all of his stuff off and claims that he is the emperor, and now he is calling out other people to rise and follow him. And this is a huge deal, okay? We're going to stop there. I know it's kind of a cliffhanger for today, but we will pick this up again on Monday, and we're probably going to finish the story on Monday, so just something to keep in mind, okay? And obviously we'll have some discussion about this in class. I will see you all in Zoom. Have a wonderful day, and thank you.